So you've shared with me, and I'm going to share just kind of a brief outline of project planning. We've had some questions about process and when we would see itemized budgets, when we would see what all of this money specifically gets allocated to in different ways. And so I think that timeline will be super helpful for readers at home, for viewers at home, to understand where we are in this process. So I'm going to pull that up now and go back to sharing that screen. Okay. How are we on? I can zoom as much as we need. So can you walk us through these 14 steps you have here?
Yeah, our process started with the development of the master plan, working with the OFCC planners and the architects. And that was looking at all of our different options. And, a year ago, the master plan was the single building at Washington State. And that was the master plan that we defined. The OFCC worked through the estimating process. If we go back into the website in a little bit, we can look at the documents that generate the project cost based on that master plan. And it's based off of an enrollment projection and then how much square footage per student the OFCC defines, provides for you, as well as all the supporting facilities like gyms and kitchens and stages and things like that. That master plan comes up with a number and approach. We present that to OFCC. They approved it, last fall for us. It then goes to the state controlling board, and the state controlling board approves the funding if we're at the top of the priority list. And so we went through those steps last year. What we just finished doing in the last month was, essentially repeating steps 1, 2, and 3 would be pending of modifying the master plan, going from 1 building to 2 buildings and 2 separate locations, getting that addendum or modification of the master plan approved by the OFCC, and it should still fit with the state controlling board. The next step is district obtaining the funding, the community passing the bond levy and giving us authorizations to borrow money. Our first step right after that is to initiate the process to issue the bonds and obtain those local funds for our share of the project. We also start working with the OFCC to complete what they call a project agreement with the OFCC, that we are now going to proceed with the project, finalize all that work, both parties sign off on the agreement in going through that. Once we sign off on the agreement with the OFCC, then we go out and hire the architect. You issue a request for proposals. You get proposals from multiple architects on how they'd run the project, their backgrounds, experience with schools, how they run that design process to include input from the community and from the staff and students as we go through that. We select the architect working with the state. We issue a request for proposals for a construction manager at risk, who's going to be managing the construction and being that, and their pay being at risk in terms of the quality of that. And we also select a construction manager at that part of the process. Once we select the architect, start that design process. Once we complete the design, and that's all phases of the design, not just the building, it's the site preparation, it's the environmental aspects, it's the traffic aspects. The architect is responsible for the specialists underneath the design work to pull that in for all those different aspects. You complete the design, So you know what you're going to go build. Then you go out in the selection process for the contractors and some contractors for the construction phase. Go through that construction phase, and complete the project, open up, and get students and teachers in.
Okay, so that's a good overview of these timelines. Where we just saw Warren pass their bond issue not too long ago. Where by comparison are they in this process? They've followed the same steps, is that correct?
Yes, they would have followed the same steps. They're in the construction phase for their 2 new buildings. I believe they're still in the design and selection of contractors for their renovation of their middle school building. That was phased to follow the construction of the new elementary and new high school. But they would have followed those same steps all the way through. But they're primarily down in the 11, 12, 13, and 14. Most of theirs have, they're at step 14. They got students in the buildings for both the elementary and the high school.
We're following in those same steps as are required then for any school district. We're following that same spreadsheet or cookie cutter timeline as other school districts.
When we went through the process last fall, had lots of questions around why don't we have the design farther along? Why aren't we doing everything? What's the quality of the estimates and things like that? And with the state paying a large portion of the basic project costs of what we're doing here, we have to follow the state processes. And the